Hey everyone, how's it going today? And welcome back to another update. So today's update, what I really want to talk about is to kind of go back to revisit a lot of the states that currently have some kind of stimulus check program going on, or otherwise also known as essentially universal basic income. As most of you guys notice is that there is technically a part 1 to this particular video, but you can watch it in either order because they also cover different states. I'll put that at the very end screen if you haven't done so, and I'll also actually put maybe just a very quick recap, really just listing out which states that video even talked about, so hopefully you guys can save time as well. But the big update is that beyond that is that we now have information about several more states that are now doing their own version of also some kind of stimulus check / universal basic income. The really great news is that the majority of these programs, they are approved. There's a few proposals, but most of these more or less are approved programs. They're open up, and if it happens to apply to you, it's definitely something to look into applying, because the deadline is, they're deadlines. That's the idea. So it's definitely something very time sensitive. So with that being said, we're going to jump right to it. But as always, real fast, before we begin, as always, consider smashing the like button. As always, consider subscribing, hitting the bell for similar videos like this, especially as we get information about even more states. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, personal thoughts, suggestions, or honestly, just really anything. Always great to say hi to new and familiar faces. So with that being said, let's get this video started. So we're going to start by doing a very quick 30-second recap about the first part of this video, which will again, I'll be at the very end screen so you guys can save time if it does or does not necessarily apply to you. I'll just read it up here, but basically in the first part of the video, we talked about a program that was going on in Alaska, in Phoenix, so specifically Arizona, in Birmingham, so Alabama, in South Carolina, in Chicago, in North Carolina, and then in Georgia. And there was actually 2 programs that was going on in Georgia. So essentially those are the 7 states or places that were covered in the first part of this video, which once again will be at the end screen on probably the lower part. But in terms of the new programs that are currently going on, so the first program that we're really going to be talking about is going to be going on in the state of New Jersey. So what's really cool is that in New Jersey right now, they are currently doing a program called the Excluded New Jerseyan Fund. Essentially what this is to provide stimulus checks of between $2,000 to $4,000 for anyone that was maybe excluded from any of the early stimulus checks for unemployment. Essentially where this goes is that there was a lot of people that maybe, especially a lot of like, for example, like illegals, immigrants, or people that don't do taxes or just don't understand the system. So because of reasons, maybe they just overlooked a lot of the stimulus check programs. So essentially those are the demographics of people that this $2,000 to $4,000 stimulus check would really go to. Now, one thing to notice is that there is a deadline for this. If you are watching this on release date, the deadline is actually going to be at the very end of this month. So if you're watching on release date, we still have about 1 week to go, so definitely something to go to look towards. You can literally just Google up New Jerseyan Fund, Excluded New Jerseyan Fund, and it should hopefully give you information about all the steps of how to actually physically apply for all of this stuff. Now, the next state that we're really going to talk about is going to be about a state that technically is doing a proposal. So that's a little bit of a heads up, but this is, again, everything afterwards is probably going to be more or less mostly approved programs. But it's really going to be in the state of Oregon. So in Oregon, the story or the background story to what happened there is, originally, there was a proposal that they wanted to do $2,000 stimulus checks to essential workers and then an additional $1,200 stimulus check to unemployed residents. Then in the month of January, they ended up reducing it to $1,000, so now for both of those demographics. And now in February 2022, they ended up reducing it again now to basically $600. So at least it's still something, but it's definitely, of course, less money, but I figured that at the end of the day, it is something maybe pretty cool to share. The way that they're going to be, if this was approved, because it is still a proposal, the way that they would send the money out is that it's going to be something that they would attach on if you apply for something, or if you add something to your taxes, called the Earned Income Tax Credit. This is essentially another stimulus program. I did make another video. I'll probably also put that at the very, very end screen on the bottom. That program, the Earned Income Tax, that actually applies to every state, all 50 states. So that is something to definitely look into. And it also applies to both people that are single and people that are married. So that's really the big news is that it's something that applies to actually a very large demographic. But of course, the Oregon one applies to just Oregon, because that's why it's called an Oregon stimulus check. There was actually one more program that actually is going on in New Jersey. I forgot to mention it before, but essentially this is very niche. This is a very much smaller program, but in Newark, New Jersey, so specifically just in Newark, New Jersey, they're currently doing like a stimulus program, but this one actually is a very targeted program, and you do have to apply for it, and I think they're only doing it for about a couple hundred people. But essentially what this is that it's a $250 bi-weekly stimulus check that's going to be paid out over the next 2 years. The reason why this is such a niche program is because it's really like an experiment that they want to maybe try to see how it goes, and then if it goes well, then they hope to experiment. So in a lot of ways, the people that are on this, they're kind of like test subjects. They're really just there to kind of experiment, a little bit like if you play video games like the beta testers, or actually honestly anything in tech. Anything like a tech, a startup, an app, a video game, a cool new technology, that's pretty much the equivalent. It's the people that are just trying out the new program. Now, the next state is that we're going to be traveling a little bit up north now, because the next program is going to be specifically in New York, but even more specifically, Rochester, New York. So I wish it was New York City. Maybe there will be a program in New York City. I'm in New York City, so if that was the case, it would be perfect for a lot of us I know that are also in New York City. But this one is really going to be in Rochester, New York. And what it really is that it's a program that they're doing where they're going to be sending out $500 of monthly over the next 12 months or 1 year. Very similar to the Newark program. It is technically an experiment program. I mean, it's still money at the end of the day, but because of that reason, it's really only going to apply to a couple hundred people. Now, granted, like Rochester is definitely a much smaller city compared to New York City, so a small amount of people is a much larger percentage in a smaller city. The next state is going to be in Jackson, Mississippi. They are currently doing a $1,000 monthly stimulus check, but very specifically actually to African American mothers. This is also technically a test experiment kind of stimulus check, so it only applies to a couple hundred people. And this is really something about all of these programs, is that if they do end up going well, they're hoping to expand it even greater to more people. The next place we're going to talk about is going to be in Louisville, Kentucky, that is currently doing a $500 monthly stimulus for youth now between the ages of 18 and 24. Now, I will say one thing is that this program actually admittedly just ended like last week. If you actually are looking, if you're watching this on release date or anything after. However, there is a lot of belief right now that they may be trying to extend it even further to reopen up applications again. But I figured it's maybe just to share because it is technically something that was happening. So, it's pretty cool stuff. The next place we are going to be talking about is now traveling to the other coast now and taking a trip to Los Angeles, California. So over in LA, there's a program that it's essentially just called the Big Leap program. B-I-G like big, and then leap like frogs that leap, L-E-A-P. And this is essentially going to apply to a couple thousand family members, where they're going to be doing a $1,000 monthly stimulus check for 1 year to anyone that has an income below $26,200 and also is living in a family of 4 people. So that's probably why, again, it might not be talked about as much, is because it is definitely very niche. But I think at the end of the day, there are definitely a lot of for people, families that are going through something difficult in Los Angeles, California. So it's important to still share if it does apply to you. And I think the last program that we're going to talk about before we wrap this up with maybe just talking about all of this in general for every other state is going to be in traveling now all the way up north and kind of to the center part of America is in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So over there, they are doing a $500 monthly check for essentially 2 years. This is also admittedly now also one of the more like test experiment programs. So it's only going to be for a couple hundred people. And in order to qualify for this, you have to have been someone that currently has an income below 50% of the income in the neighborhood within Minneapolis that you currently live. Now, one thing about this program is very similar to what happened in Louisville is that this program is technically one of the programs that actually already ended. It literally just ended. However, there is a lot of talks that they may be trying to extend it again to reopen up applications. So I figured if you happen to be there to maybe just write it down or maybe to follow up. And this is really something that maybe applies now to every single state collectively, is that if you were to essentially just Google up your state and slash or even maybe your city, so wherever your city is and then your state, and literally just type next to your state UBI. U like unicorn, B like boss, and I like igloo, or universal basic income. And many of these places do have now or are starting to experiment with some kind of universal basic income. And I would say that that's probably the best place for places that do have a program where you can see the application to read about it and actually physically apply for it if the apps are still open, or to maybe learn about other programs that maybe don't exist in this video. Of course, as we get more information, we will definitely share more as they come. So beyond that is that's what I really wanted to share in today's update as always. So hopefully you guys found some insight to it. Hopefully we can find some, relief to at least know there are a couple 100,000 Americans, through all of these programs collectively that will now be getting some kind of relief, or even more hopefully to come. And so if you guys enjoyed that, as always, maybe consider smashing the like button if you guys haven't done so. Consider subscribing and hitting the bell, especially as we get more information about other states. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, thoughts about anything. So that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, stay safe, stay well, and see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.